because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are, and we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
Welcome to Cows in the Field. This is a show in which we discuss philosophical themes in popular films. My name is Justin.
I'm Laura.
And today we embark on a journey to the final frontier to discuss Star Trek, the motion picture. Welcoming to the show, we have Max Evry. Max is a film journalist and author whose most recent book is a masterpiece in disarray, David Lynch's Dune, an oral history. Welcome to the show, Max.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Oh, I love it. And I have to say, we will talk about your book a little bit. I mean, it's not the subject of this.
Time?
We're going to have some Dune time because I have the book here in front of me.
Well,
I love the book. It was mentioned by John DeVore when we had him on, I think, the Dune 2 episode.
Yes.
But we've had John on a couple times to talk Dune 1, Dune 2, David Lynch's Dune. We are huge fans of David Lynch's Dune. So to find this book, this 500 or so page book about Dune and everything, and just to hear through the pages your love of Dune was really quite awesome. So I just want to thank you for writing the book. It's an excellent book. Fans of Dune should check it out.
Yeah, it was funny because as I was writing it, it was one of those things where I was like, why has nobody written this yet? And because like it was a book I always wanted to read. Like I always wanted to get like sort of like there was a making of Dune book that came out concurrently with the movie, but it was a little bit of a publicity thing. It didn't have like all the dirt you would want, all the gritty details. So yeah, I mean, but I was just shocked that nobody had gone into it because it was such a fascinating film and a fascinating production, and I sort of overdid it, and I kind of scorched the earth and made it so nobody could ever write another book about.
I think that's right.
That's how you got
I think that's right.
This is your book. Everybody else has got to back off.
Well, the thing that
details.
I think I love about Dune, and before we get to, we're going to talk Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but since I have you as a fellow Dune head, I'm just curious, like with Dune, did you always love it, or was there a sort of a breaking in period? Because this is a film, part of the fascination, I think, for a lot of people, myself included, is that it is, as you call it, a masterpiece in disarray. It's a sort of failed in some regards masterpiece. And I love that tension there. And the film itself is clunky at times, but that is part of its charm. And I think, for some people, that clunkiness, they can't get past that. And they're just like, wow, this was a disaster. And for other people, the clunkiness is sort of this thing that you can kind of love ironically. And then for, I think, people like us, it's something that we genuinely just love. Like, we love the eccentric absurdities of that film. But was it always that way for you, or was that something you grew into?
It was definitely something I grew into, I think, because I think that my first exposure to the movie was watching it pan and scanned with commercials on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it's the Universal TV edit to boot. So it was the most bastardized version I could possibly watch. And there's a lot of, really amazing science fiction movies, including the movie we're going to talk about today, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and also like Blade Runner and THX 1138, that all got a mulligan. They all got, the directors got a chance to go in and do it the way they wanted to. And, and I prefer the director's cuts of all those movies. But Dune obviously never got that luxury. So I think it is harder to penetrate, the shield of that movie because, like you said, it's so eccentric and so weird, and also concurrently so, compromised. And but that's what makes it fascinating. I think the thing that fascinated me the most was not until after the book came out had I actually seen Dune 1984 with an audience.
Wow.
And I got to do it once in Dallas with Matt Zoller Sites, and that was a DCP, and it was beautiful, and that was a wonderful screening. And then I got to do it at the Nighthawk here in Brooklyn where I live, and
where in Dallas did it show? Sorry,
it showed at the theater where they caught.
The Oswald Theater. Yeah,
the Oswald Theater.
Yeah. I'm from Dallas, so I was like, did they do it at like an Alamo Draft House, like one of the newer ones, or did they do it from like that's a cool theater? That's fun.
It is. It was. You could definitely feel the vibes.
Yeah,
but like
it's not called the Oswald Theater, but that's whatever. That's the one that they call.
Of course. But no, and then I showed it at the Nighthawk here in Brooklyn, and it was like a choppy 35 millimeter print, and it was kind of like watching like the Grindhouse version of it, and there was both experiences were just fantastic. And the thing I learned is like, even though the 2 hour 15-minute version of that movie is not, what David intended, it plays really well with an audience. Yeah, it moves like gangbusters, and everybody just cheers whenever Alia is on. Like she's just so badass.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
They did not. So I saw it at the Brattle here in Boston. No cheering for Alia. I did see it in 35, which was incredible a few years ago, and. I'm his front row. I was just ready to go. I was locked in. I think there were some.
We had like a newborn, and Justin was like, "Can I take time? Like, will you be okay for me to leave for 3 hours so I can see this movie?" And I was like, "It's your destiny. You gotta go."
Very important. It is really. It's lovely. The thing I love about Dune. One of the things I love about Dune is that it's because it's such a quirky object. It creates this sort of like we get each other immediately because we know we're both Dune heads. Like that's just one thing. Like it's just you kind of know someone. You're like, all right. And it's I'm going to transition here. It's a little bit like Star Trek. I think Trekkies get one another in a way that since I'm not a Trekkie, I have to now confess. I think I'm fascinated. I'm a sort of an outsider who appreciates, but not a Trekkie. But I can appreciate that there are people that form communities around these kind of sci-fi things that aren't as popular as Star Wars, for example, And so let me ask you this first, before we actually get into the movie. Are you a Trekkie, Max?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
Definitive.
So it's interesting because this kind of dovetails with Dune a little bit. When I was doing publicity for the Dune book, like a lot of people just assumed I was a huge Frank Herbert fan, or even that I was, a diehard David Lynch fan, and I'm really neither. I'm like I love David Lynch, and I've seen all of his stuff, but it's like he's I have other directors who are way above him, like Terry Gilliam and Jim Jarmusch, people like that. I am a David Lynch's Dune fan. And it's the same thing with Star Trek. Like I've seen some of the original series. I've seen some of the original series cartoons. I saw a little bit of Next Gen growing up, and a little dribs and drabs of the other stuff. And obviously the three J.J. Abrams atrocities. I think for me, Star Trek is those 6 movies with the original cast. I feel like, I've talked about this with Dana Gould on his podcast, but because he's a huge Planet of the Apes fan. And I feel like Planet of the Apes was like the first real science fiction saga. Like it was 5 movies that, they weren't recycled plots. Like one followed the other, and there was a clear, saga there. And so they were the first sci-fi franchise to really do that. But I think Star Trek was the first one to really do it well, and to have like a 6 movie series where there's a through line, and there's the characters evolve, and one picks up after the other, and and we can talk about today too, like how like this movie kind of sets up the kernels for both Kirk and Spock's arc throughout those 6 movies. There are things, even though they tried to kind of distance themselves from this movie and kind of strike a different visual palette and a different tone for the rest of them, like there's still things that they follow through on in all 6 from this one.
That is okay. That's fascinating. So I was thinking. So do you consider Star Wars a sci-fi franchise, or do you consider it something else, like I don't know, like a fantasy movie or something like that?
I think it ventures more into science fantasy or whatever you would call it. Yeah, and I think I think I would put Star Wars kind of after this one because technically it didn't really complete its arc until Revenge of the Sith.
I see. Oh wow! So you're thinking,
then,
I see.
and then and then also
Hmm.
like that it's up to you whether you want to count the last 30 that came out.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
yeah, like Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, I think, but like it's so weird that like it's the middle part of sandwiched between two movies that I don't really like that.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, fair enough. Totally. I see what you mean, though. Yeah, because I was like, well, because this film does feel though like it's. I mean, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like this film only exists because of Star Wars, because they were able to get the budget that they were, and so on, in part because of the success of Star Wars 2 years prior.
Yeah, the short version of the story is that they were kind of talking about reviving Star Trek from the moment it got canceled in '69.
Yeah.
Because there was a huge fan base for it. And I mean, it kind of got revived with the animated series, which did include the entire cast, but, it was a little sillier than the show. But that was just to kind of keep the franchise warm, I guess. And then, Philip Kaufman, who directed The Unbearable Lightness of Being and the Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake, he was going to direct the Star Trek movie at one point. And, I think that one was going to be even more existential and philosophical than this one. And that was going to be called Planet of the Titans. And then they decided to make Star Trek the inaugural show on a new Paramount network that they were planning. And it was going to be called Star Trek Phase 2. And it was going to have most of the original cast, but then they were also going to have new characters. And I think Leonard Nimoy was only going to do a cameo. And that's kind of why his appearance in this one, I think, is kind of doesn't happen until about a third of the way through the movie. But yeah, and then they basically, when Star Wars hit, they were like, "Oh no, we need to do this as a big sci-fi, epic, and release it to theaters with a big budget and real sets and stuff." And so they took the sets and stuff that they already built, and a lot of the people who had already been cast in the show make small appearances in this, like the Vulcan at the beginning of the movie was going to be like the Vulcan on the show. But instead he gets melted.
Sad.
Yeah.
Teletransporter gone wrong.
Oh, it's tough.
Yeah. And Ilea was another, I think she was going to be a character on the show. And yeah, so the evolution of that is a lot of the scripts that they wrote for that show wound up being next gen scripts.
Makes sense. Yep.
And likewise, the script for Star Trek: The Motion Picture was evolved from the pilot script that I think Alan Dean Foster wrote for Star Trek Phase 2, and then they got other writers to come in, and it kept evolving and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But it's essentially the same script as what was going to be the pilot episode of Phase 2. And it's also kind of a remake of an original series episode called The Changeling, which was where the Enterprise has a run-in with a probe named Nomad, who collided with a farming robot or something, and his programming got all messed up, and he decides to wipe out anything that's not like a logical, machine or whatever. And so it's a very similar, and but that is kind of the revelation at the end of this movie. Whereas in that, like right at the beginning, they're like, "Oh, this is an old probe," and
they know what's going on. I see. I love that the V'ger where he's like VGER. why? Like, it's so great. He's like rubbing out the middle. I loved that reveal. That made me laugh.
So
Yeah.
you're right. So what you're saying resonates though, because it feels to me, it really does feel, as a casual viewer of Star Trek, it feels like a 45-minute Star Trek episode, but then expanded with a budget. That's just exactly what it feels like. And with this kind of expanded introductory sequence where all the characters get introduced sort of slowly, and you get this kind of getting the team back together, you get these expanded long sequences of the filming the Enterprise, and these things that are really showy and quite impressive looking. I mean, the scale that they achieve with some of these shots, I think, is really striking for 1979. It looks great. And then at the end, all of that stuff with going into the cloud, all of those sequences, which just, I love how slowly paced it is. I love how they're just like, we shot this, it looks fucking cool as shit, and you're gonna sit here and watch it because it looks amazing. And of course they couldn't do that in the show. They would not have had the budget or the time or whatever. And so, but I like that that's what kind of fills it out. And there are a couple little action sequences here, but those action sequences are not much different from what you would have gotten in the show, like Wormhole or whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, like it definitely feels, even though it came out in the wake of Star Wars, it definitely feels more akin to 2001: A Space Odyssey in terms of the way it's paced. And I mean, even Douglas Trumbull was the guy who did the effects on that movie as well. And I agree. I think the thing I love about this movie, is how experiential it feels. It's like you really feel like you're taking a voyage through space, like, and we're not cutting away from the Enterprise and going to some B plot ever. Like it's all, the machinations and the politics and the and just the technical, virtuosity of the crew and all that. You also, when you mentioned, I never even connected this before, but like, you're right. It is kind of a getting the band back together kind of a story. Like that's like my one of my favorite sort of subgenres. Was like, like Blues Brothers or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and like I love it. You get like sort of these but in terms of, I mean, I got into the movie in a very weird way because like I, growing up, was a huge fan of Star Trek II, which is very different from this movie. I know you guys have not seen any of the other films.
So we should say out the front, this is the first and only Star Trek film we have seen. I mean, I think I have seen one of the Jabrams ones, but I can't remember.
You have?
Yeah, I think I have seen the first one.
Fascinating.
But anyway, setting that aside.
I like that Jabrams, like it's Benifer, but it's one guy.
We just call him Jabrams.
Jabrams.
Anyway, okay, so with that out of the way, please tell us about Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, so like, Wrath of Khan was sort of made as like almost an answer movie to this one, because like this movie had a really insane production where they were rushing the movie into production and all this stuff, and they had to, like on Dune, they had to switch out the effects crew late in the game, and we were scrambling to get all the effects done. They had to hire two different teams, one led by Trumbull, one led by John Dykstra, who did Star Wars, and who later quit Dune. And it was a nightmare, and Gene Roddenberry, who created the show, had a heavy hand in as a producer on this film, and he was a big problem because like he kept forcing them to rewrite the movie as it went along, and was generally kind of a pain in the butt. And one of the first things they did when they were doing the sequel was they kicked him off the franchise.
I see.
I think he had a hand in Next Gen, but like he was not part of the movies from then on. And they brought in Nicholas Meyer, who's this young hotshot, and they were like, the last movie cost like $50 million. We're going to give you 14.
Wow.
And one of the interesting things about that is he actually uses a lot of stock footage from this movie. But he recuts it as like I'll show you how to cut that shit. Like he's like, it's much faster. It's much more to the point. Like, here you go, boom, boom, boom. I love, smoldering over these, models and stuff. Like, oh, let's get a 10-second shot of the the spotlight that's illuminating the
really
Enterprise.
big lights on the new Enterprise.
Yeah.
Like not even on the ship, right? Just lighting her up. Just
in space dock. Let's get that space dock light some love. Star Trek 2 is just meat and potatoes. Here we go, and it's like much more of like a Horatio Hornblower kind of, what's that one? Master and Commander. It's a lot like that. It's like more like, space dogs duking it out and with their two ships. And and I loved that movie. And then I, wound up watching the motion picture and I was like, what the hell is this? Because it's like, and it felt like it was 3 hours long. It's not, it's 2:12. But it felt like for years I was under the impression it was 3 hours long because that's how long it felt. And it's just a totally different animal. And then in college, the director Robert Wise did his director's cut, and I watched that on DVD, and I was like, it was like a revelation because it's like the pacing is better. The effect sequences make things clearer. The story points are better. There's a lot of extraneous shots and stuff that are cut out. I mean, it's still slow. It goes from like painfully slow to merely glacial, but it's the director's cut. And which version did you guys watch? By the way,
I'm not sure. How would we know? I think we watched the 2:12 version. Is that the director's cut? Or
they're both like 2:12.
Oh crap! Well, then
did it have? It's difficult to pinpoint. Okay, was there a scene where Spock cries in your version?
Yeah.
Was there?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. When was the Spock crying?
It's towards the end. There's a scene where Spock turns around in his chair and he has a tear in his eye.
Yeah.
And Kirk is like, "Not for us." He's like, "No, for V'ger." and then he says very funnily, I weep for V'ger like I would weep for a brother.
I don't.
What?
I don't think
No,
that was in our
happen?
version. I don't think that. So which version did we see if he did not cry?
The version that he did not cry in is the theatrical cut. So you saw the worst version.
I see.
Oh, no.
See the other word. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But that's okay. You can still if you ever watch it again, I recommend watching the director's cut. But you watched the version that people saw in theaters in 1979, and and people were a little bit it's like, and I mean, and part of the problem too is that it was an unfinished movie. It was literally the prints were wet. Like they literally shipped them to the theaters like straight out of the chemical baths or whatever. And and Robert Wise never had time to tinker with it because the special effects were so long in the making, and that they were literally like placeholders in there, and then they would just put them in and then ship the movie off. And then so he never got to really give it the love that it needed. And the director's cut is much better about giving you the story with a little more nuance, I think.
So I'm curious though that what so you see Wrath of Khan, you're like, this is great. Now you see motion picture and you're like, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
How did you come to love motion picture?
Well, through the director's cut.
I see. So the director's cut was what did it for you. You saw it in college and you were like, now I see.
I'm like, I get it now.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's
and
interesting.
It was the same thing with, Blade Runner was already my favorite movie when I saw the final cut. But the final cut is the version of that movie for me. And, same thing with the recut of THX 1138 that George Lucas did. I think those are all three of those are great.
And the Star Wars special edition version.
Yeah, you love that.
I was going to say those are three good examples. It's always a mixed bag whenever a director goes in and tinkers.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, and even like the same director, like I will only watch the director's cut of Aliens, but I will not watch the director's cut of Terminator 2. So
Yeah. I kind of get
Cameron
that.
is a tinkerer, and it can go one way or another.
Right. Yeah,
right?
I do prefer
Like,
I see what you mean. Actually, I think I would agree with that. I definitely do not like the director's cut of T2, but the director's cut of Aliens is kind of interesting. Gives you that little extra stuff with like Ripley's past.
Okay.
Kind of useful.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like didn't he adjust the constellations in Titanic to be like correct for that day in April? Like,
But he might have
There's, like,
done
some
that.
things-
He might have done that, but there's no like Titanic director's cut. It's just
no,
he changed it
he
for
just,
like the
as
home
he
release
released
or
every
whatever,
time
yeah.
it got released, it got a little something
But
done
without
to
a
it.
without a change in the label, which is
No. Yeah, like that's more like him taking out digital noise and all that stuff too. That it's like so tempting now for directors to just give it a
such a
little
nightmare.
fiddle.
What do you
little
think
fiddle
of
for the
Max?
DVD,
What do you think
just
about
release.
DNR in 4K releases?
What do I think of what?
DNR, digital noise reduction, in the 4K releases
Oh.
of discs.
Honestly, I haven't seen enough of those
I
to
see.
have an opinion.
Fair
I think I did watch the Aliens one, and I was like, because
Yeah.
it's like I kind of liked it when it was grainy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Because
part of the charm and the
Well, it's-
dirt
it's-
and like scariness of it.
Yeah, and it's also like that movie, you know, is like that's a Vietnam movie. It's a Vietnam analogy movie.
Yeah.
So it's like it makes sense that it's grainy because that's what the Vietnam footage looked like. You know, and like and yeah, like the whole point of that movie is like this heavily armed high-tech force goes in and gets their asses handed to them, like in Vietnam. And
By the natives. So I want to throw something out there. I'm curious if this resonates or not. So I, as a Star Trek outsider, as someone who I think, given my love of philosophy and science fiction, should be a Trekkie, but is not, for what, that's just historical accident, I think, that I grew up with Star Wars and not Star Trek. But as someone who, so I have to, my appreciation of Star Trek has to be filtered through my history and background of Star Wars. And so I unfortunately, that's just how it is for me. So I think of what is appealing, and I'm just going to focus on this movie, but I think some of this will generalize to the show and so on. But in this movie in particular, one of the things that really appeals to me, that makes this distinct from Star Wars in a really cool way, is that where Star Wars is a world where, at least to me, there's not really anything that can surprise me. Like, I sort of know all the aliens, I know all the planets, and there's not really any sort of discovery that's happening in Star Wars. The universe is broadly known, and now it's just like Empire versus
And now
Rebels,
it's like
whatever.
trade discussions.
Yeah, whatever.
They're just working out the details.
Star Trek, though, there is that dimension of it. There's like federational, interplanetary trade or whatever. But the big part of Star Trek that I really dug in this movie in particular is the kind of the frontier aspect, the like going into the unknown, the discovery, the possibility that we won't be able to even know or comprehend what is on the other side of the horizon, And I think that is really, really brought out in this form of this sort of amorphous cloud that appears, that begins to sort of, it is like, absorbing everything into it, and then it's about to like, come to Earth and whatever. And as they were going, into the cloud and all that, and it was so sort of surreal. And as you were saying, like 2001, like, again, I think this is where another 2001 connection is like similar to 2001. It's like when you go beyond the infinite, like anything could happen. Like that's really, to a point where that's not Star Wars. Star Wars, like I know if they go through hyperspace, they're going to end up in some planet. It's going to be a lot like Earth with aliens walking around. But like when you go beyond the infinite, there could be something completely surreal on there. It could be like you enter into a Dali painting or whatever. And I feel like Star Trek, in fact, this movie was a lot like that. And that was very exciting to me. I had no idea what they were going to find in the center of this cloud. I was just really excited by that. And I loved the resolution of it. And so to me, the appeal of Star Trek is very different from the appeal of Star Wars. And part of it is this sort of capturing the excitement of this sort of going into the unknown. I don't know if that resonates with you or if that resonated with you when you were in college and watching the director's cut. But to me, that's a big part of the appeal of this film.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think the thing you're getting at is that, like, Star Wars is a very utilitarian universe, and it's very used, and it's also kind of wild, wild west.
Yeah.
Whereas is Star Trek, everything, it's the United Federation of Planets.
Yeah.
So it's like it's essentially the difference is one is a dystopia and one is a utopia.
Right.
And I think, Star Trek's whole thing has, always been about inclusivity and, and the fact that, they're not at war, technically, even though they do get into, fights and conflicts and things. But yeah, like their aim is discovery, not self-preservation.
Yeah.
Like in Star Wars. Yeah. And I think, the thing Star Trek also reminds me of all the time is this Kurt Vonnegut quote. They both deal in impossibly accommodating worlds.
Interesting.
And yeah, and I love that, and I think it's true because it's like when they're in conflict, it's like there's they're always working with each other to find a solution, whereas like. In modern day, it'd be more like, if there was a crisis like this, it would be more like that Adam McKay movie where you have the Tim Cook guy being like, oh, well, the asteroids have this element in them that'll be really good for cell towers or whatever. Yeah, like I think like there's like we've sort of in the Star Trek world we've sort of moved beyond that level of selfishness.
Yeah. I know. You know what? Thinking about this from what you're saying, they're both products of their respective times. So Star Trek is a product of the '60s, the space race, the kind of optimism of intellectual progress and discovery and that sort of thing. And Star Wars is a product of the jaded and cynical '70s when the Vietnam War has dragged on and is looking like it's going to be an American defeat and one in which the public, is largely against and so on. So there's this kind of like jaded, ongoing, cynical war that's happening. And so they're products of their respective times coming out roughly a decade apart. And that decade, in the ensuing decade, is you basically get the boomers becoming more and more jaded. They go from flower power hippies to like, what the fuck is going on, and like now it's time to just like do drugs and like and tune out because all of the things we were fighting for didn't seem to have any impact because the government just did whatever the hell it wanted to do anyway. So I think that is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, even Han Solo is a drug dealer. Like they don't come out and say that, but that's what smuggler means.
I never thought of it like that. Yeah, I didn't know what he was smuggling. So he's smuggling stuff for Jabba the Hutt, who's a gangster. Yeah, he's probably supplying drugs, and he's always smoking stuff. So.
Yeah, and that dovetails very well with Harrison Ford himself. There's a great apocryphal story about somebody in 1977 went to see Star Wars when it came out, and is in some screening in California, and they're watching the movie, and then Han Solo comes on screen, and a guy in the audience yelled, "Hey, that's my drug dealer!"
I thought he was a carpenter before he was cast in Star Wars.
Carpenter slash he had several hobbies.
Yeah, you had
several
carpenter with some special cabinets for your weed.
Yeah.
Well, so let's push this connection further. So the other thing that I think is really interesting is you have in Star Wars, Han Solo is this. He's this dude who kind of doesn't want to be there. He doesn't really want to be sort of caught up in all of the big drama. He's this sort of detached cynic. But there are no characters like that in Star Trek. And our central protagonist, Captain Kirk, is the closest thing we would get to a Han Solo because he's kind of brash and kind of a renegade. But the dude is like totally committed to his to the to Starfleet Command and all that, and like saving the day. And he's a real idealist. And
yeah, he's a John McCain kind of maverick.
Yeah.
Right.
But
I thought Dr. McCoy was going to be more of that when he shows up and he's got the big beard and the open shirt and he's like, I basically got drafted.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. He's going to be the guy who's like pissed duty's there. But he gets his haircut and then he's all in.
They're all in. There's nobody who's just like, oh, come on, guys. Like,
and Dr. McCoy, when he shows up, he looks, let's just be honest, he looks like he was running a sex cult in Florida, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad we're all in agreement on that.
Just like a huge necklace.
Oh yeah, he's got like a DV
shirt.
too, right?
Yeah, it's like an half open shirt, and he's just
you swore you'd never come back to Starfleet, and then he's just like, all right, I'm here.
Yeah, duty calls.
He really just like gets that beard cleaned up, and he's like, all right, Kirk, like let me get you back in line, like I do. Which I'm assuming is what his role was before.
I love too that Kirk. He has his flaws as a character. They don't shy away from them. He wants Starfleet Command again, or he wants to be the commander of the Enterprise again. He kind of strong arms his way back into the ship. And I love that they, it's not said, but it's kind of clear that this is a guy who, I think it's a little bit like active military guys who get the bug and then have to go back. Like he feels like he's been really good at his job as the commander of the Enterprise. So good that they've promoted him to a really fancy desk job.
Middle management.
But he's not actually happy doing that kind of bureaucratic work. He really wants to be out on the horizon, on the ship, finding out the new things. So as soon as the opportunity arises, he goes back out there. But he makes all these mistakes and they don't shy away from it. But when he makes the mistakes, like for example, he drives them into warp speed. The ship isn't ready. Everybody told him it's not ready. They open up a wormhole and then there's some sort of asteroid there. They have to blast it. He's going to go to phasers. It says no proton torpedoes. Decker, that is the guy who's
proton torpedo.
Yes, so good. And Decker is the captain. He's taken command over from, overrides his order in that moment, and then of course Kirk is pissed about it. So he pulls him aside. He's like, all right, my quarters. And then as soon as he's like, why'd you override my order? He said, look. Whatever, the phasers weren't going to work for whatever reason. And Kirk's like, okay, yeah, you're right. You saved the ship, And I think there's something where he's also has a certain degree of humility. Like he's a good leader. He doesn't like double down and is like, fuck you. He admits his faults and he recognizes where this guy is going to be a really useful person to have on his team. And he doesn't want to alienate him. And he says, like, can you be the handmaiden to the ship or something for me or something? He says something like that.
Can you nursemaid me through?
Nursemaid me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's interesting. I was just listening the other day to, do you know the sci-fi writer Harlan Ellison?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he wrote one of the most famous episodes of Star Trek, City on the Edge of Forever. But Harlan was famously extremely brash, extremely outspoken and some would say bullying guy, but he was saying in this interview like, no, I'm not a bully, I'm a tough guy, I don't take shit, but one thing tough guys do is when they're wrong they admit it.
Yeah.
And I loved hearing that from him. And then, watching Kirk kind of enact that in this movie, because that's what he does. And that is what makes him a great captain. And and you kind of, at the beginning, part of the suspense of it even is, like, oh, is Kirk going to fuck this whole mission up because of his ego?
Yeah.
And because of his obsession with being the captain of the Enterprise. And at first, it seems like Decker would be the better person to have at the helm. But once they get to V'ger, that's when Kirk kind of comes into his own,
Totally.
and that's when Decker starts to seem like more of like the ineffectual guy. He's like, I think going into that cloud is an unwarranted gamble. Well, define unwarranted.
Yeah.
Everybody on Earth is going to die.
Right. And that's great point. And also, he insists that they keep their weapons ready and Kirk has the intuition to not provoke. So he says, no, we're not going to keep weapons ready, not going to put up defensive shields. I don't want to provoke an attack. And that is the right intuition. So he has that kind of experience of, as he's been in the field. Yeah, it's been 2 years since he's been in the field, but he's had that, that experience. Which
this is not my first giant space fart cloud. No, totally. And what's really interesting, and I only dug into this recently, but because I'm not an expert on Robert Wise, I've seen a handful of his movies. He's a great director. Won two Best Director Oscars for West Side Story and Sound of Music. But he did a submarine movie called Run Silent, Run Deep. And, that movie starts with Clark Gable is like this, this old school submarine captain who has been at a desk job for a year. And Burt Lancaster is the young new captain that everybody likes of this submarine. And Clark Gable, the admiral, crams getting his command back down the Navy's throat and takes over and keeps Burt Lancaster on. And and I was like, oh my God, it's the same movie. It's the same dynamic too. And and at the end, Burt Lancaster joins with a bald AI in a disco sex light infinity.
Hell yeah. If only we could all join with the disco AI into the future. So Kirk, great character. I think fantastic character. I love him. I mean, again, I'm an outsider. I haven't seen the other movies. So maybe it turns out Kirk becomes like a sex offender in the later films. I don't know. But I love him now. Sorry, as a joke, Laura's looking at me like, what the fuck? But the other character I absolutely love is Spock.
You love Spock. You kind of are Spock.
I think the thing with Spock that makes him so interesting is that he sort of sits in this uncomfortable space between the computers, which everyone has to interact with. So much of Star Trek is them interacting with computers, just people sitting in front of desks, like typing away at computers. And of course the humans. And he is himself half Vulcan and half human. So he has the kind of the parts of both of them in there. And I think as a result, he's uniquely positioned to understand and empathize with V'ger, and also recognize what V'ger lacks, the very thing V'ger lacks, because he has both of these things. He has sort of the logical component, maybe not to the same degree as V'ger, and he also has the human component. And I just love when stories do this, where they have the kind of half-breed character be the one that is able to bridge the two worlds, but at the same time
doesn't fit either one.
Never doesn't fit in either one
of them,
and feels like this eternal outsider to both. And I think part of the reason I like that is, I mean, I am myself mixed race, so I find that aspect of it really cool. It's like, here's this cool mixed race person who kind of embodies what I feel, which is never feeling fully comfortable in either of, my sort of ethnic backgrounds, like either white or Chinese, but at the same time feeling like, you have this, not like superpower, but you have this ability to sort of like see both sides of things, and you kind of position yourself that way. So I love Spock in that way. I'm curious, like Max, like what do you think of Spock? What do you think of Spock in this movie? Because he kind of comes in late, as you said, and then is very prickly to everyone around him for most of the film.
Well, I think you're right about everything you just said, and also like the thing about Spock, if you've not seen the original series, is he didn't always act like that. He had a little bit more humanity to him in the show, and was a little funnier and was a little more expressive, even though he was still very restrained and very sort of stoic. Yes. And the thing about that whole aspect is that is his arc in this movie and in all 6 movies. And is coming to terms with his humanity, aspiring towards logic and Vulcan, ways, but ultimately choosing humanity. And and even though he is barely in the first act, it's his movie. I think I think if you watch all 6, they tend to either be Spock or Kirk movies, except maybe the third one, which is a little bit McCoy's movie. So I like that one. But they tend to be either Kirk or Spock stories, where one or the other has the arc. And in this one, I think it's absolutely Spock's arc because, Kirk, he kind of, in terms of this movie, he achieves his arc in the first 3 minutes. He becomes the captain of the Enterprise. That's it. His only other arc is that he emasculates Decker until Decker doesn't want to be a human being anymore.
I don't know. I think there's also a little bit of he comes to terms with the real treasures, the friends you make along the way. I got the feeling in the beginning when he's like, I gotta have McCoy or I gotta have this guy. He's getting the team back together, but only because he's like, well, this is the biggest situation, the most dire situation. I gotta have my guys, I gotta have my team, and I gotta have the best. Mm-hmm. And then as it goes on, it seems like he sort of values the pushback, the feedback, the connection, the teamwork that they have because they have different perspectives.
Yeah, I think he does come to value Decker over the course of it, because Decker will say something, he'll sort of undermine him or question him, and then
he's like, this is your job.
Yeah, he'll be like, this is my job is to provide alternatives. And he's like, that's right. Yeah, good point. And so I do think he does seem to
mini arc maybe.
He does seem to sort of come to respect Decker. I mean, it's weird because of course he respected him at the beginning because he chose him for the position. But I think it's he comes to sort of see his value in the course of the ship.
He feels like it's less of, he understands that it can't really be a one man circus to run the Enterprise.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, at the end, he's not like, bye bitch. He's like, no, Decker, don't.
He's the one that tries to stop him. And then Ilya pushes him away, I think. Right. So it is interesting. They almost have a kind of father-son relationship almost.
And this is, I want to get back to Spock, but I thought Laura had an interesting sidebar where Kirk is clearly I gotta have Bones, I gotta have Spock, and I think, and I know this is a little juvenile, but in a way it's not. I think there is some gay subtext in this movie.
Interesting,
because just the intensity of those scenes, I need you, Bones.
He does say, I need you a lot in this movie,
they hold each other and they pause and stare into each other's eyes, and and the scene with Spock where he's like, Bones, I need him. It's and I always thought maybe that was just me being a middle schooler, but I think it might have been something that Robert Wise was interested in is the alternate sexuality, because in The Haunting, his horror movie, also has a character who's a barely veiled lesbian, and in the 60s and the 70s, those things weren't really in the forefront, certainly of major genre movies like that.
Right. Is that The Haunting of Hill House? Is that his?
No, The Haunting.
Right. But is it from the book? Because there's that.
Yeah, the Shirley Jackson.
Yeah, book, Shirley Jackson character is maybe not even thinly veiled as a lesbian, but choosing to
lean into
that and depict it on screen and not change it up completely. Yeah, it does indicate that he's interested in
normally that would be the first thing we're not doing that.
We're not doing that. Yeah.
You are married now. But
married and you love wearing pretty skirts.
Yeah. But I mean all these guys, none of them have on-screen relations.
Except for Decker, and that's to a woman who's taken an oath of celibacy and then become a robot.
That was a really funny moment where she's just like, he's like, oh, hi, welcome aboard. And she's like, whoa, I'm celibate.
do you want to know the story behind that is insane.
Give us the story.
It's insane because if you're just watching the movie, even like me, the first 100 times I watched this movie, I'm like, oh, this clearly Starfleet has some celibacy oath that they make everybody take. No. The Ilea is a Deltan, and she comes from, I don't know, Delta or whatever the fuck. And it's the backstory that Gene Roddenberry and these guys came up with was like their people are like they like literally like communicate through fucking. Like they just like all they do is just like fuck, suck, and blow each other, and like that's like their like that is their love language, literally, and like that is like how they express each other. And so like when like she first comes on the bridge and like was it Sulu and like Chekhov are both like you know, because it's a Delta, and like that was the story. And so she had to swear an oath of celibacy because her people are known for just like fucking anything that moves.
Okay.
And that's not my backstory. That is the official backstory.
Yes, I did read that after the fact.
Wow, okay.
Yes, because I was confused because I felt like I had read it like she thought that like Kirk was coming on to her and she was like, back off, bro. And I was like, I think he just said good morning. Like that was pretty like, that was a lot.
But is it also the case that she has some history with Decker? Like they've had a relationship? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it's just wild because it's like I don't think any of that is like readable in the movie.
No.
And
no, I kind of like how much is not readable. I like in this
that
movie.
too. I like that they're like we're picking this up n number of years after the final episode of Star Trek, the show, and a lot of shit's happened, and we don't really need to catch you up with it. We'll just you know these characters. Yeah. And I just love that it's like getting the band back together, but it's not that every character who comes on board is like, oh man, I just got finished directing my sex colony in Florida or whatever. You know, they just like they just show up and you're like, okay, and like here we go.
Yeah. But getting back to Spock, I mean, I think like you know, his story is really moving, I think, because it is like, you know, clearly he wanted to attain colon R, which is just like being pure logic, no emotion, and you know, and then had this connection with this being. And so like, you know, Spock and V'ger are on parallel journeys, like they're on the same journey basically. And and then you know, throughout, you know, like, you know, Spock is, you know, once he shows up on the ship, he's like on it, like he, you know, he is using his logic to, you know, get them out of jam after jam after jam, you know, whether it's a warp drive or, you know, communicating with V'ger and or the mind meld, you know, like all that. He's just like he knows what to do, you know, because of who he is. But you know what he discovers is, you know, like like he said, you know, like V'ger is barren, you know, V'ger is cold, you know, like he you know, this simple bond we have between us, you know, V'ger wouldn't understand that. And there's even that, you know, the great scene, like I said, that's only in the director's cut. It's not in the theatrical, where Spock turns around and he's crying for V'ger. And he says, you know, I weep for V'ger like I would weep for a brother. Which is funny because once you get to Star Trek V, his real brother does die and he doesn't cry for him.
But can I get a preview on like what Spock's journey is for the next 5 movies though? It sounds like he doesn't go towards the Vulcan way, as he goes towards humanity, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's it's basically that he you know, it's whatever, it's a 40-year-old movie. He dies in the second one.
Okay.
And then he gets resurrected in the third one. But he's a little bit not himself, and he's a little bit more Vulcan than he is human. And then the fourth one is all about him kind of coming to terms again with his humanity, and that's when he really becomes Spock again. And then there's a great moment at the very end of the sixth movie where he says something, and you know that he's truly become kind of human at that point. So like his arc, you know, over the 6 films is to become human. And then Kirk's arc is to basically be the captain of the Enterprise again.
Hell yeah, and he's good at it.
Check.
yeah. I mean, in the second movie he takes over again, and then in the third one, he actually commits a crime, and then they're basically fugitives from the Federation, and then in the fourth one they kind of save the world, and he gets. His only punishment is he gets demoted from admiral to captain again, and then everybody's like, "Woohoo!" And then so his, but that's the thing I love about, and him and Dr. McCoy have the whole conversation about how, this is his obsession, that like to really, to being captain of the Enterprise, and and in that sense, the Enterprise itself kind of becomes like a character, at least through Kirk's eyes. It is his obsession, and that's why I love that whole scene where the Scotty's taking him from to space dock, and they're literally just like doing this long, slow, like like just going over every curve and crevice of the Enterprise. It kind of reminded me of, like, I don't know if you've ever seen like the Playboy Playmate of the Month videos that Michael Bay used to shoot before he became a director.
No.
I have not, but we will be checking those out.
It's just like this like hot chick in a warehouse, like mist everywhere, fan blowing, just like going over. It's like gynecological, how, and the camera's just like, leering. And that is what it is, like the camera is like leering at the Enterprise.
Yeah. I also like how many like they did a lot of reaction shots on Shatner's face, and like he's like doing different things. He's like, ooh,
yeah.
And he's like lifting an eye. He's like, hello, ladies. Like he's like, there's a lot of shots of his responding to the refurbished Enterprise, which made me smile.
Yeah. And then when they get to V'ger, itself, which is like the other like long ponderous model shots that are in this movie, like V'ger has first of all is very symmetrical, purposely, I think, and it very very, because it's supposed to be this like thing of pure logic, so it's like extremely symmetrical. They based it a little bit off Rorschach blots. It also kind of reminded me of this thing I used to do in high school. It's called a double doodle, where you take a pen in each hand and you do like try to mirror designs. And it's supposed to like stimulate the left and right hemispheres of your brain when you do that. But like V'ger is super symmetrical, and they just they spend way long going over every part of V'ger, and like let's get real, some of it is very vaginal, and
yes, you're like, it reminds me of this, it reminds me of that. I'm like, are we not going to talk about how it looks like a vagina? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They even like have like at one point is like they're looking right into like the vulva or whatever, and like Decker's like gulp. And there's like little egg type things. Like it's all like kind of reproductive imagery, which fits into the theme of V'ger being reborn.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
They made a baby.
So I read a little bit about how they filmed some of those sequences. So there was this account I found online by Charles Barbie, who is one of the visual effects crew, and he discussed, like, because I think the reason I was interested in this is because these shots look absolutely amazing, which is why I would forgive them spending way more time than would be necessary on just these extensive shots of going through V'ger's vaginal canal or whatever we are in. But what one of the things he said was, so first of all, I think part of the reason they look amazing is because it's all in camera stuff. So there's no fucking, like, obviously there's no digital effects, garbage,
CGI,
or whatever.
Yeah.
And
there's a little bit in the director's cut.
Okay. Well, so thank God.
But not that much.
Okay.
It won't bother you.
But one of the things they did was he said they did in-camera compositing, which is fucking crazy. So basically they're doing multiple exposures on the same reel of film, running the camera. And not only that, they're doing long exposures. So he said they did up to a few seconds per frame. So to do like one pass down the V'ger canal, it would take 6 to 8 hours to film that. And then the single shot would be composited out of like, some of them had 10 passes of exposures on the shot, which is insane. So just like the amount, they're just running the camera, and they have, of course, these computers to run the camera so they could program the camera to make the exact move they needed to make and at the exact timing. But they're just running it through this sequence various times, getting multiple exposures, probably putting plates on it and blocking different parts of the camera. And that kind of stuff, just, it's what I love about it is it's just like 3-strip Technicolor film. It looks amazing then as today, as it looked then. It looks so good, and it does not degrade the way that, again, I think there's some value to the kind of rootedness in time of early digital effects. I think they're kind of quirky and have their, place too, but there's something timeless about this stuff. It just looks as good now. And like, I think I just have to shout that out because I absolutely love those sequences.
Yeah. And if you read, a guy I know, Jeff Bond, wrote a great book about the making of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and it's fantastic. And it goes over all the stuff with Robert Abel and Associates, who were the original effects guys who kind of fucked it all up, and then they had to bring in Doug Trumbo, who the process you just described of doing all the passes in camera on the negative, like that was his process that he used on 2001, Close Encounters, Blade Runner,
cool.
And it's like that's why all those movies still look aces. And I obviously, like there's a great like those movies don't age, and like Star Wars did age. The difference is, Lucas went in and, took out all the matte lines and things and spruced it up later, in ways that you wouldn't notice if you hadn't seen it in its original form.
So the other thing I really like, so we were kind of touching on this, Spock's journey and everything. They get into Viger, and then Spock, because again, he's drawn to Viger. Like, he's failed his Vulcan test because he felt Viger's presence. He felt the mind of Viger in the solar system or whatever when it was coming in. And so he's drawn to it. And I love the way you were putting it, Max, is that he's drawn to Viger because he sees in Viger the kindred spirit of the like ultimate logical system. And he's at this crossroads. It's like, do I become a kind of mentat, or do I embrace my humanity? And he has to know what it would be like, what his fate as a kind of mentat would be like. So he has to go and encounter Viger. He goes in there, he kind of, does this, he does the Vulcan death grip on the guy or whatever, and then he steals the suit, and he pilots himself right into the butthole of Viger. It is kind of...
That's the only way to describe it.
Yeah. And then on the other side, he has this mind meld with Viger, which sort of overwhelms him, and he comes back, and this is when he says, he's like, it lacks mystery, beauty, meaning, hope. It determines it's looking for answers. And I love the way he puts it, because it kind of feels like Viger's going through a midlife crisis. Is this all that I am? Is there anything more? It's like a great summary of the midlife crisis. And then to me, this movie made in 1979, it resonates today because we're in an era where we have all of these wondrous computational technologies. We have AI systems that can, automate all kinds of stuff. And it's, I work in education, you work in writing. I think it's forcing people in fields like this to, to think and justify what we do in a world where these things can create facsimiles of what we're doing that are in some ways really good. At least they can fool most people. And I love that this message of Spock is like, yeah. Well, a world dominated by AI, these sort of thinking, unfeeling beings in a way, would be a world without mystery and beauty and meaning and hope. And that this film provides a kind of answer to that. Because in the end, Viger needs... The way Kirk puts it, the quote he gives is, I love this. Kirk says, what Viger needed in the end was to evolve and to embrace its some sort of human thing and to leap beyond logic. And then Kirk says, we gave it the ability to create its own sense of purpose, out of our own human weaknesses and the drive that compels us to overcome them. And I think that's just such a lovely encapsulation of at least one aspect of where we are currently, where, you know, AI can do all this stuff really easily. So what role is there left for the human? And you might think, well, the role is that this thing doesn't have an ability to create its own sense of purpose, to set its own agenda, to set its mind to a particular task, to have a yearning. And we can. And that's one aspect that differentiates us. And it's because of our weaknesses, because of our limitations, which this being doesn't have, that generates that drive for us. And I think, you know, I'm not saying this is the only answer to the question of, like, you know, the meaning of life in the world of AI or hyper, you know, machine intelligence like they encounter in the Star Trek universe. But it is one, and I think it's one that I think is very timely in today's day and age. Anyway, Max, what do you think
exactly,
of that?
Like, especially
kind of...
in an you know, when we're reading stories about like AI therapists convincing people to commit suicide. You know, it's like, you know, yeah, like that's like, you know, an actual human therapist. My wife is a human therapist. Would not do that. They would have enough feeling to know when they're, you know, hitting a nerve or you know, going the wrong way with what they're, you know, telling the person they're talking to. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, like V'ger doesn't know that it's hurting people. It doesn't even comprehend what that is, what a person is. You know, it's like, yeah, that's my one sort of beef is at the very end. You know, they try to kind of sugarcoat V'ger a little bit, where you know, like Dr. McCoy is like, I hope we got this baby off to a good start, and I'm in my back of my mind, I'm like, I think that baby just killed trillions of people.
Well, but maybe, or you know, I think the way Kirk thinks of it is like what they did was it's what Spock ultimately has to do, which is reconcile the two components: the humanity, the kind of weak component, which is the humanity, which has all these emotions and is burdened by anxieties and, you know, you know, and fraughtness, fraught desires and that sort of thing, and this sort of pure, calculating, cold, dispassionate logic. And it's sort of in the unification of the two that there is sort of flourishing. You can't have one without the other, and you also can't have, you have to have the correct sort of mixture of the two. And, you know, you do see these themes sort of coming back. They're kind of eternal themes that we're kind of constantly grappling with. Like we strive for perfection, but we also recognize that it's in imperfections that make us sort of valuable in who we are.
I think too, like coming back to community, let me see if I can kind of like articulate what I was going to say, but you're saying it's the messiness of humanity that makes us what we are and gives us meaning, but also like our community and our differences. And in constantly facing our differences, there is messiness, and also there is like a creation of something new and a harmony, and like that's like there's this like voracious absorption that V'ger is doing to try and get all the knowledge possible, but that's sort of like discovery or pushing for discovery or pushing's sake. She doesn't know why she's doing it. And, you know, whereas why Kirk is doing what he's doing, why people and the alien species have all come together on Enterprise and in like this larger federation of planets is like why we continue to explore is because we encounter new perspectives, differences, different cultures, different ways of thinking. And then that's all the value of that, the product of that and all its messiness is there on the Enterprise when we see the different species of aliens and all of their different abilities, perspectives, ways of thinking coming together to create a community.
Yeah, including Kirk and Decker.
Yes.
Who are constantly disagreeing, but their disagreement isn't undermining them having a kind of fruitful collaboration.
No, yeah. It's making the Enterprise better.
It's making everything better. Whereas V'ger... basically anything that doesn't do what V'ger wants, it just kills it and assimilates it into itself.
Right. Yeah.
Like a child.
Yeah.
Like a small child.
Yes.
As the father of two small children, I can say yes. That is exactly what
kill it.
Yeah.
Smash it.
Yes. That's my favorite line in the movie too. Like when Dr. McCoy is like, this thing is about to wipe out every living thing on Earth. What do you suggest we do? Spank it.
I did also like where he's like, oh, you want the information? guess I'm just gonna walk away now.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. That's I was whispering to Justin, I was like, that's called active ignoring.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a parenting move where you just
Selective
turn your
focus, right?
selective focus. Yeah, you turn your body. They're not doing something you don't like. That's a behavior you don't want to encourage. Turn your body, turn your to literally move your eyes away from the child. I was like, he's parenting her right now.
I think my favorite line of the film is when Decker. So at one point, like Ilya is absorbed into the cloud and then comes back as this sort of robot version of herself, who's there to like observe the. As she puts it, I think she's there to put it to observe the carbon-based units infesting the USS Enterprise. I love it. I love everything when it's Ilya as Ilya robot. But my favorite line though is so. They decide to task Decker to sort of show her around the ship because they think, maybe their past relationship will sort of stir something in Robo Ilya. And he's like, yeah, here's some things where, people would do some recreation stuff. And then she says, the words recreation and enjoy have no meaning to my programming. I love it. I just think, did you ever play with that program, Dr. Sabezzo, like on like DOS? It was like an MS-DOS program. It was like a primitive chatbot from like the 80s, I think.
Okay.
And you could like, and he
would, a proto-smarter child or whatever that thing was.
Yeah, you would like type stuff in and it would like, it had a voice thing and it could like say back its response. So it'd be like,
my name is Dr. Sabezzo. I am here to help you. Say whatever is in your mind freely. Our conversation will be kept in strict confidence. Memory contents will be wiped off after you leave. So, tell me about your problems.
I don't really have any final thoughts. I really loved it. I'm really grateful, actually, that you suggested it because this is a movie that I think I would not have been able to convince. No offense. I mean, like, no, I don't want to like cast aspersions here.
To the no offense who love
to Trek. No offense to you, Laura. No offense to Trekkies, but I don't think I would have been able to convince you to watch this film if it weren't for the podcast.
No,
so I'm
you're
grateful
right about
to you,
that.
Max. But final thoughts on Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Well, I'm curious to know, Laura, like as a human female entity,
is a carbon-based entity
female.
that is infesting this house right now. Tell me, yes. What would you like to know?
And specifically, as somebody who never watched the show, is not interested in Star Trek, or but I mean, was this a tough sit for you, or were you because of your philosophy background or whatever?
I don't have a philosophy background so much as like I've been
fortunately
like next to Justin.
Laura just has to her philosophy background is being like
married to one.
Yeah, being like
I've been philosophy adjacent. I've been to many a philosopher party. Like this.
Was it a tough sit, or were you able to engage with it?
No, I think it was not at all what I expected it to be.
What were you thinking it was going to be? Actually, I'm kind of curious.
I mean, we watched TNG, and so I thought it was going to be like sillier.
We watched a couple episodes of TNG, I should say.
No, like a couple episodes. Yeah, like the one where like Data's like drunk or whatever, but he's not really drunk, but he's like gets really horny. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember.
Anyway, like it was definitely
Data's the stupidest character because like I feel like 90% of his screen time he's like doing something not robot-y. Yeah. But somehow the joke is that he like gets sexual. Anyway, that's what I remember. So I thought it was going to be like a little bit more zany, I suppose. Like I thought we were going to and I thought it was going to be like, if it's the motion picture, then we're going to go to 3 planets and like there's going to be a bunch of different things that happen. And, we get this first act of, gently, lovingly introducing us to the Enterprise and getting the band back together. I don't know who the band is, but you can tell. Like it's emotional. It's emotional when everybody comes back on board. You can tell Decker's the new guy, and he's trying to manage that. And I was intrigued. Like it was just very different than what I expected. And I liked it. Like I don't think I didn't go in like expecting to be hostile towards it. I try not to, but I did say I was sleepy and not in a bad way.
Look, we watched the theatrical cuts.
It's a relaxing movie. Like you told me later that you saw people say it's like their go-to sick flick. Like if you want to, and that's funny because my go-to sick flick is Robert Wise's Sound of Music.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. No, but I agree. Like it is like I think the reason I'm able to watch it so much is because of, like there is a plot, but like it's not super plot driven. It is more experiential. It is almost more of a hangout movie.
Yeah.
And I tend to be able to rewatch movies, that are more like that, like With Nail and I, or like it's just like that aspect of it is great. And I also think it's cool that you picked up sort of sight unseen, with the rest of the franchise. You picked up on sort of the vibe of Kirk, Spock, McCoy.
Yeah,
like
I think it was done really efficiently and really well. Like, it didn't feel like there were any exposition drops or like any like, as you know, 5 years ago, like none of that. But the acting itself and like and the writing, I think, carried me through to me be like, I understand the emotional stakes here and like what these people mean to each other and like the tensions there. And I think it was done really well. And then, I was just there for the psychedelic scenes too. Like, I was just sort of like in the couch cushions like this. And like maybe I kind of dozed for a second, and then I was like, "Oh, we're still in Beecher."
Yeah, I'd sort of nudge Laura. I'd be like, "Check it out, man!
Like, we're still in Beecher, and it's still cool." And I was, I was into it. So like, yes, I'll rewatch it when I'm less sleepy next time.
No. We just got to pick up with
pieces.
Wrath of Khan. I think we just move through the series.
We're going on to the next one.
We are 100% convinced to just watch the rest of these movies. I feel
sure.
Yeah. I was into it.
And I think as you go through them, I mean, like, are you guys fans of the MCU?
Sort of.
We're like becoming new MCU fans via our son, who's like, and we watched like a lot of them up to the Infinity. What was it? No, what? Why am I
Endgame?
Yeah,
Endgame. Thank you. And then we kind of dropped off around 2019, right around when my son was born. And now he's like asking he's like getting into the lore, and I'm like going back into that headspace. But anyway, so how was the connection with the MCU?
Well, the thing is like, I mean, like, a lot of people say like, oh, the MCU is, it's like TV. There's no auteur. It's like bullshit. There is an auteur. His name's Kevin Feige, and he is the mastermind behind all these movies, and he is a huge Star Trek fan.
Oh, interesting.
And as you watch through the 6 movies, I think you'll see a lot of the secret sauce of what they do, in the Marvel movies, and why they're so effective is because at the core of all 6 of these movies is Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and it's that friendship and that bond, and and like, even when you get to the 5th movie, which I think everybody agrees is the worst, the Final Frontier, the one that William Shatner directed himself, even that one, like, the production is shoddy and the plot is stupid. But you just love watching these 3 guys, and that one is almost like more endearing because it is like so focused on their friendship and their camaraderie and all that. Like, there's a scene where they sing "Row, row your boat" around a campfire, and Kevin Feige points to that scene specifically, and he's like, that's like kind of at the heart of, what we do, at Marvel. And Marvel had some shit movies, like, Thor: The Dark World or whatever, what have you. And it's like, but even in the shittiest Marvel movie, there's always these, grace notes of the interactivity between the characters and how their relationships grow between movies and stuff like that.
Yeah. Also, the Mission Impossible movies, which is
I was
all
just about
about
to say
the sort of friendship between. It became all about the friendship based around Ethan Hunt and his crew or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good observation, and it's making that now as a pitch. Like, Laura, we're gonna have to do it in the next week. We're just gonna knock them out.
Yeah, this is like when we got into Twilight and just had to run through it.
It'll be fun to come back and do The Undiscovered Country, which is the last movie with you guys.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we'll watch all of these, and then we'll book you for The Undiscovered Country, so we can sort of do a capstone on the rest of them. Max, thank you so much for being here, and I just want to remind folks that the book is not about the Star Trek the Motion Picture, but it is about David Lynch and his movie Dune, and it just covers everything. I mean, it's 500 pages. It's got everything you would want to know, including interviews with all the cast and crew. And what can you give us like one?
It's also a great looking book.
It's a fantastic looking book.
The cover, the shiny
the
pages.
shiny end pages are red. It looks awesome. Can you give us like one, I don't know, quirky thing you learned in the process of writing this book, just to give people like a tidbit of something they are going to get from reading it?
First of all, the book is 560 pages, so there's a lot of anecdotes to think about right now. I'm like, oh, which one? But it's I should say, even though it's big and long, it's not unwieldy.
Well,
like
it's divided up well.
Yeah, like you can skip. It's very like bifurcated or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how you go, but yeah. It's like if you're not interested in Toto's music, skip this part. If you're not interested in the costume, skip this part. I will say, like, I really loved talking with Bob Ringwood, the costume designer.
Cool.
Who I think everybody who reads the book, tells me like, oh yeah, he's the MVP. Like because he's like completely unfiltered,
nice.
Like and not like a dick in a dick way, but just like he can't not tell the truth. He's a little Spock like, I guess. And like he just one of the things that I sort of had an inkling of it, but I confirmed it with Bob. Then we talked about is just like how influential the Dune still suits were to superhero movies. Because it's like there had never been a costume quite like the still suit, because it was like the black leather and the built-in muscles, and it's like that then became every single superhero suit you've ever seen since, including Batman.
Oh yeah,
which Bob Ringwood designed.
Mm-hmm.
And and he says like in the book, we very specifically yes, the Dune still suit is the direct grandfather of
That's
the
awesome.
It is a cool suit. It's a lot cooler than the Enterprise costumes. Like with all love to Star Trek, I was like, that's not flattering anybody on this ship right now.
Yes, that's true. I will say that I wear my still suit desert style, desert fashion.
How did you know how to do that?
Well, it seemed like the right way. Sorry, we just quote this movie back and forth. We love this movie.
You guys are doing
it seemed the proper
Urine
way.
and feces are processed in the thigh
pads. That's right.
Yeah. I always wish that during the scene where Kyle MacLachlan is fighting Sting, the Sting would just stab Kyle MacLachlan, just a big spray of piss with his pen. Yeah.
Oh my God. I never would have thought that, you're just carrying around a giant diaper there that could explode at any moment.
A diaper that is also your lunch.
Yeah, a lunch diaper.
But it looks so cool.
It does look fucking awesome. Do you have any of the Dune toys?
I did, and then at my first signing, I gave it away. It was the sandworm.
You had the sandworm, the phallic sandworm.
Yeah, the one that John DeVore. I think his quote was, "It's a toy that Freud would advise a mother against buying."
Yeah.
Yeah, we kept calling it the dildo when we were. He had it
John
here
was
while
showing
he was
us,
talking to us. He kept bringing it up to the camera.
Yeah, no. When I interviewed John for the book, he was showing it to me too. He's very proud of it, and
and maybe he takes it everywhere with him. It's just he's in a pocket at all times.
Yeah, and then I was like, I need one of those too. And then I was like, by the time I finished the book, I was like, no, I don't.
Fair enough. That's actually, you know what? That's totally fair. I was in a used bookstore in Calgary, Alberta, and they had the Dune coloring book. The what? And the guy refused to sell it to me, and I was he was like, it's not for sale, and I was like, well, what's it doing there? And he's like, well, I'm just sorting this, and I was like, seriously, I'll pay whatever you want. And the guy was like, sorry, man, it's not for sale. And I was like, I was miffed.
That coloring book, by the way, is interesting because it does have an image of Hara and the two boys who were cut out of the movie. And
Oh.
Molly Rin, the actress who played Hara, sent me the page of her from that book.
Oh,
So,
really?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, her story, by the way, if you read the book, her story is very moving because she this was going to be her big break, this movie, and then she comes to the premiere and she realizes she's been almost completely cut out of the film. And but it's really interesting to hear her story and hear how working on the film had just a tremendously positive impact on her life, and then and then sort of some disappointments that happened later. And I think that was like one of the things that I was like that was very important to me was to not just focus on the big stars. Obviously I got Kyle and I got Sean and I got David Lynch and all these people, but it's like I also wanted to showcase the sort of making of from points of view that you don't necessarily get all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Max, thank you so much for being here. And where can people find you if they want to read your writing or hear your thoughts on social media?
I'm on Blue Sky. It's where all my brain dribbles go. And like if I write an article or I'm on a podcast like this,
just Max Evry at Blue Sky Social or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know the exact thing. Yeah, but there's not that many. Max Evry. And then I have a website too. It's the same thing, maxevry.com. And and that has more info about the book and some of my appearances and stuff like that. And when the next book starts happening, that'll that'll start getting updated more often. And we're just now wrapping up finally the audio version, which will hopefully be available hopefully by Christmas or something like that.
Did you do the recording or who did the recording?
Yeah, it's me, and then I hired two actors to do all the voices for the oral history part.
Nice.
Very cool.
And it's truncated too. So it's only like 14 hours.
Okay.
But it's a more streamlined version of the story without all the little cul-de-sacs that we go into in the main book. But yeah, I think people will enjoy that when that comes out. But thank you both for having me on.
Thanks, Max. This was great. And for the folks at home, we are at CowsPod on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can find us on the web at cowspod.com. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking to Emily St. James about Red Rooms.
We're getting spooky.
We're getting spooky. Beginning spooky season. Very excited for that. So tune in then in 2 weeks. We'll see you guys then. Bye.